Namaskaram everyone, welcome back to the podcast. We have a very special Hatha Yoga teacher. I'm sure many of you have already seen him on Instagram lives. We have Gangesh Anna with us. Namaskaram Anna.
Namaskaram, Vaishu, Anna. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes,
Namaskaram, everyone listening.
So Anna, if with your permission, we'll go directly into the podcast.
Yes, let's go for it.
I would really love to know a lot about you and this name also, Gangesh and I, whether it was your first name. Also, I would like to know. So
we'll get into those details.
Yeah. So we can start right from wherever you want, your childhood or wherever your college, whichever place you're comfortable with. And if you think we could know a bit about you.
Wow. Okay. Childhood. So I was born in Colombia in South America, and I grew up in a very humble neighborhood, very humble family. I think this is also why I can relate so much to India, and most of the people that I have come into contact with, because the way that I grew up is very similar to lifestyle in India.
Oh.
And I did go to school there until I was in 7th grade.
Oh. Okay.
So right up until about 12 years old, my family decided to move to the United States. My father was already in the United States, but I was in Colombia, going to school, whatever. And then I remember when, that first time they brought us to New York City, I was 12, and I was so mesmerized by so much, because. And I'm sure it's the same thing, like, somebody from India comes into the United States, they're like, oh my God.
Yeah.
So much, so much of your senses are constantly targeted, and Times Square, things like these, and all these big buildings, and, all these fancy cars and all these things. And so I remember when I first came here, I was just like, I don't want to go back. Like, I love it here. I don't want to go back to Colombia. And you remember when we first got our green card, we came in January 1999 for the first time to New York City. And we only stayed for 2 weeks in January.
Oh.
And then they told us, you go finish your studies, graduate 7th grade, and then you come back here and, we can continue. And I said, fine. But I remember telling my father that I didn't want to go back. I said, just enroll me in school here. I don't care. I'll learn language. It's fine. And anyway, they sent me back to Colombia. And I remember once I moved back in the summer, August 99. So, first time came in January, then moved entirely in August. And a month later, I hated it. I didn't want to stay here anymore. I mean, I loved everything, like I mentioned, all these beautiful things, and definitely the lifestyle that we had was very different. But I was so lonely, I didn't have any friends. I couldn't speak the language, and people making fun of me for being from Colombia and not speaking English, and so many things. That it just dramatically went from like being so good to be here to not wanting to be here at all. So that's a little bit of my transition there. I guess this is actually it's the first time I share this.
Please, more deep. More.
So pretty exclusive over here with Vice, Joanna.
Yeah. Sadhguru exclusive, Gangesh exclusive.
Yes. So it was very. I don't want to say traumatizing, but it was not the best time of my life when I first moved here. Especially in school, I remember being discriminated very often for not speaking English. And, being from Colombia, everybody knows only about like Pablo Escobar and cocaine. And so everyone would ask me, like, oh, is your family drug dealing? And I was like, no. And this became very like normal. I hate to say it, but it became very normal. Everybody only knew about that. And even now, like, I remember in 2017, after I graduated school in 2016, I stayed in India traveling for the new year. And I remember I went to one house, and the minute I said I went from Colombia, all they mentioned was Narcos, you know, that show on
Yeah.
Netflix. And I'm like, my goodness, it's been, you know, 20 years and still this thing is going on. And that was, you know, that was not very nice experience being in New York. However, I like the fact that it's so diverse, you know. I'm in Queens, and Queens is supposed to be, or known as, the world's most diverse borough. And you find people from all over, and it's very, I mean, it's a little bit segregated, but you can see people that are, let's say, one neighborhood, everybody's Greek, then the next neighborhood, everyone is Indian, then the next neighborhood, everyone is Colombian or Mexican or from Italy. And it, you know, you have everything from all over. There's this street that I visit often to buy incense and sage and my turmeric and everything.
Oh,
So a lot of Indian people there. And you know, once I walk there, I feel like I'm in somewhere in Nepal or in North India. So it's that aspect I really like. You know, you could grab food from just about anywhere in the world in New York, and I think it just set me up for what my adulthood would be, because I got very early on, I got introduced to so many different cultures. And in Colombia, you know, you just only know yours. So I got introduced to so many different cultures, so many different foods and things like this. And you know, it was very, very nice, that aspect, but I hated it nonetheless. I didn't want to be here. And I started mostly, I guess, living here, but my heart and mind were somewhere else, you know. And you know, you just kind of get used to it. But I would often travel back to Colombia and visit there. And, you know, fast forwarding back to, I guess, when I'm somewhere around 17, you know, I'm already working and, you know, kind of just going around same things. And I wasn't never interested in anything. I know that this sounds crazy, but I was never interested in anything. I was already in college, and I had gone to college for advertising design. That's what I love doing. I love drawing, coloring, you know, all these things. And although I went to school for it, I was just never happy with anything. And if you talk to my father today, he'll tell you that I'm the type of person that never finishes anything. I start a bunch of things, but never really finish. And I just kept like seeking, you know, I would get bored easily. And I'm like, why is it that I can't just find something that I really enjoy or love doing? And, you know, being in college, but not really happy with what I'm doing, I just was kind of like doing it for my parents. And when I was going through my college days, I was told by an actual professor, he said, you know what, you could be the best designer,
oh,
but if you don't have a hand in the company, then the odds of you getting in are very slim. And I'm like, what am I doing here?
okay.
You know, I don't know anybody in the industry. And at the time I was working in the Empire State Building
Oh, okay.
as a tour guard.
Okay.
Had a lot of fun there, I guess. It was
Okay.
probably one of my favorite jobs at some point, because I interacted with a lot of people from all over the world. Something like maybe 10,000 people a day I would see
Oh,
from all over the world. And I was, at that point, maybe I was 20, 21, and had just bought a new car.
oh,
And
which car?
yeah,
Which car?
I was, it was humble, you know. It was a that year was 2007. I had a 2007 Mazda 3. They don't have
Oh,
Mazda in India, right?
no, here I haven't seen
Yeah,
Mazda much. No, no.
yeah. It's a Mazda 3. You know, very, very nice for a 20-year-old
Yeah,
old.
nice car.
You know, very small, and I loved it, honestly. It was a good experience. But, you know, having to pay the car and the insurance and all these things, and I felt like I was already stuck to, you know, what everybody here in the United States kind of lives. You know, you have to go to school, you have to get your car, you have to get yourself in debt, you have to get married by a certain age, you have to have a house by a certain age. And I felt like I was already in that. And you know, at that point, it's everything I knew. So I went along with that. And just not happy with the job that I had, although I had a lot of fun and I was making good money for a 21-year-old. But I had a friend then, maybe 4 years later, so I'd say maybe 2011, a really good friend of mine just tells me one day, hey, would you like to maybe coming for an interview at my brother's company? Not his company, but he works there. He said, I think you'd be a great fit for the company. Why don't you just come in? And I said, what kind of business? They said, finance. I said, wow, I don't know anything about finance, but you know what? Let's do it, you know? And I went in and I really liked it. And I liked more the fact that I was my own boss, you know? And honestly, I didn't know what I was getting myself into, but it turned out to be life insurance and investments. So not the most fun thing to do ever. Anyway, finance is boring, but you know, I got to wear fancy suits and, you know, visiting people and whatever. But I must admit to everybody listening that I miserably failed at that.
Oh, okay.
I did it on my own. I was what's called a financial representative for 2 years. And in the first couple of months, I did really well. I made a lot of money, but I guess it was just that, like I mentioned earlier, you know, I like starting a bunch of things, but I get bored easily. So once again, I got bored, but this time we're talking about money. You know, it's like, how can I get bored doing what I have to do to make money? And so 2 years later, I found myself in debt. Instead of me making so much money, I found myself owing $2,000 to this company, man.
Oh.
And and so finally got to pay that off, and I left the company. And then I get a phone call from somebody from there, and he says, "Hey, listen, you know, we've been kind of noticing the job that you've been doing, and we think you're a great fit for my office. You will not have to worry about finding clients, because that's where I was lacking. I couldn't find clients, and so I couldn't make money." And he said, "Don't worry about the clients. You know, we'll give you everything you need. You will just work for me. You get a steady paycheck every week." And I said, "Fine." But since I hated it so much, I said, "All right, I'll only work 4 days. I don't want to work 5 days a week." And he says, "Okay, what will you be doing the other day, the extra day, and, you know, Saturday and Sunday?" I said, "Well, my passion is photography. So let me just try that. You know, I guess I had already been doing it since college, and, you know, it's more like a hobby. But I said, I can make money out of this. I'm going to try." And so I decided to go for it. And it started, you know, very slowly while I was working in this office. I hated working in that office, but I knew I needed money. And I stayed there for another 2 years until I got really exhausted of the culture in these financial offices. And, you know, I think that's when my eyes started to open to life, because I guess the way that I was raised by my father and my mother, although I didn't really spend much time with my dad. I mean, let me just make a small parenthesis there, because my father left to the United States when I was 4 years old, or 3, I think. So I didn't really spend time with him until I was 9 years old. And then he left again. And then again, when I was 12 that I came here, we kind of like bonded again. But my relationship with him was just never really kind of there. And nonetheless, I felt like I had a great support from his side as a father figure. And so my mother, and the way that I was raised by them was very humble, because we come from very humble backgrounds. You know, to share, I guess, going even more personal and deep, my father had to start working at 9 years old. And he was, you know, this is a very, very common scenario in India. You see really small children working, and you can sometimes find them in dumpsters. So my father is one of these children. You know, he had a really rough childhood. And, you know, he always tells this story that he could only wear shoes up until he was, I think, 15 or something. You know, they just didn't have money. And he had to, when they didn't have any money, it was 11 of them altogether, brothers and sisters. My father was one of the oldest, so he had to go out and provide for the rest of them at 9 years old. So, you know, listening to these stories as I grew, and not only that, but seeing my family and the struggles that they had gone through, and they still are to this day. I always, you know, I consider myself very good-hearted in that aspect. So when I'm in this financial world and everybody is so selfish and just looking to get richer no matter what, I started to see such disproportionate matter, you know, of how some of them get richer and the others get poorer. And not only that, but what they will do, and to the extent that they will go just to make a penny, it just sickened me, you know. I just could not wrap my head around that, and I did not want to become that. So after I finally got completely fed up, I resigned. And I started traveling. Just before I left that office, I traveled for the first time outside of the United States, and I went to Istanbul in Turkey. And that's, I guess, when I first started getting in touch with spirituality.
Oh, okay.
Because yeah, it's getting interested now. Because you know, again, I'm kind of lost in my life, not really knowing where I want to go, already fed up with the work I have. At that point, I think I was maybe 27. And I'm like, man, I'm only getting older, and I don't know what the hell I'm doing with my life. So I was very, I don't want to say scared, but I was very lost in my life, you know. And even like in relationships, you know, I guess emotionally speaking, or romantically speaking, let's say, even then I couldn't find any stability in my life. And so when I left Turkey, I spent a couple of days in Istanbul, and I guess just having myself being surrounded by a completely different culture, and being in touch with these mosques, and the level of spirituality that these people have there, I had never been in touch with. Although I live in New York City, I had never gone into a mosque, you know. But when I went there, I guess being in touch with all this history and so much, I started questioning, because the Hagia Sophia, one of the buildings there, it was a mosque, and then it became a church again, and then again a mosque. And I'm like, I may be wrong about that. It may be the other way around, but it just, you know, I started thinking, I was like, all these people are always, you know, if you go look back into time, they're always fighting for religion. And I've never been the religious type. In fact, I've always kind of being the black sheep of the family in that aspect, because I never wanted to go to church. I never wanted to really do any of these things, but I would only do them for my mother. And seeing the devotion these people had and everything, it just kind of shifted something in me. But what it did was, it just led me to ask questions again, because I remember as a child, I would always ask, you know, looking up at the stars, and I would always think about aliens. I don't know why. But I would always look at the sky wondering, you know, and even my family to this day, they still make fun of me, because I used to talk about aliens so much and UFOs, and oh my God, and I want to see something. And I just had 1,000 questions. And, you know, I went to Catholic school. And in Catholic school, you're not supposed to ask any of these questions. Okay.
Okay.
I even had a subject, religion as a subject. And I remember asking some questions, and the nuns that would be the teachers, that at some point they'd say, you know, just don't ask that. Okay. Just keep reading, you know. And, you know, I was too young to even say why or anything like this. And I've never been kind of the person to be, I guess, disrespectful to elders and you know, things like that. So I would just stay quiet. But then here I am again at 27, asking these questions that I kept again longing for when I was young. And I didn't really pay much mind to it, but I knew something was calling me, and I didn't pay attention to that. But I remember that coming back to New York, something felt so different. And I said, I don't want to be here. I want to travel again. So as soon as I got back, I booked another trip, and I left this time to Prague and also Budapest. Excuse me. And I guess I was just thirsty for more. I didn't know what I was looking for, but I at that point, traveling was soothing that, you know. So I loved Prague. I stayed there for a couple of days, and then went to Budapest, and I loved it. I guess it's one of the most beautiful European cities I've been to be honest. And came back to New York, and got myself in a relationship. Still struggling with this whole photography thing, and somehow I got to a point in my life where I realized how messed up my life was, you know. And I think I like to share that because not many people are actually honest enough to look at their life and say, what am I doing with my life? You know, they just simply go with whatever everyone else is doing. And I was doing what everybody else was, you know. I was okay at that point. And just to even go deeper and share more personal aspects, I at that point, I was going to a bar Tuesdays and Sundays, out of all days, okay?
Okay.
Not Friday or Saturday.
Okay.
Sundays and Tuesdays, I was going to a bar and just ramming beers left and right. I was never the type to get completely drunk, and I would often drive. So I would have maybe a beer or two, still drive, very irresponsible. But that's kind of what I was doing at that point. I had a beer belly, you know, to here. And
Oh, is it?
nobody ever said anything, okay? No one in my life, my family, the girlfriend I had at the time, no one ever said, hey, maybe you should stop drinking.
Okay.
No one ever said anything, because it was the normal thing to do, you know. And I was so unhealthy. I remember I had my triglycerides were high, high cholesterol. I weighed 200 pounds, completely depressed, terrible. And what really just kind of, you know, tilted everything over was the relationship that I was in was really bad, I have to say. And bad in the sense that I guess I was able to see all the wrong things that I was doing in other relationships in this one relationship. And it just kind of, you know, brought me to my knees. And I was like, my goodness, yeah, I'm going through all of this because this is exactly what I've been putting all these women through before. So all of these things, you can only imagine, Vaisakh, my life was just upside down. I had, you know, my heart was plummeting. I had no real job, no money. I was practically unemployed. You know, I had to struggle over here with like payments, rent, and all these things. And I had no idea what I was going to do with my life, and did not want to go into a job. And somehow I was like, man, if these guys like, you know, Steve Jobs, Mark Zuckerberg, like all these people just suddenly, you know, they did so much for the world, I have to do the same thing somehow. I don't know how. And then in 2015, I had a couple of experiences just seeking, you know, seeking more. It just led me to having certain experiences that completely obliterated everything that I knew or that I am. And it was such a big impact on me that I became depressed completely. I finished my relationship with that person at that time towards the end of 2015 for my birthday. I was turning 28. 29 I was turning. And here I am, end of the year 2015, completely just lost, depressed, broke, you know, nothing to aspire for, no college degree because I left college. Well, technically they say I finished. I just couldn't get my diploma because I didn't pay. I don't know if I still have credits to make, but whatever, that doesn't matter anymore. But, you know, I find myself in the lowest point of my life where, and at that point, I remember for that birthday, it was very significant because a really old friend of mine from high school just kind of bounced back in my life. I had no idea where this guy came back from. His name is Sebastian, and I'm really thankful for him if he ever hears this. He invited me to see a group of people. I had told him about the experiences that were happening to me that I did not understand, but he somehow kind of, you know, seemed to know, and he invited me to meet a couple of people, and I sat with them and had a really good time. But I just knew this was not it. And somehow he appears for my birthday. I had a surprise birthday party. I hate those things, but here it goes, having a surprise birthday party. And he shows up with a book called The Be Here Now by Ram Dass.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I look at this thing and I was like, what is this? And he was like, just don't worry about it. Look, I know it looks funny. Just there's a note inside. Just read it when you get home, okay? Don't pay attention to it right now. Just, if you have any questions, just let me know. That's it, fine. I got home the very next day. I looked at the note. The note said, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And I said, okay, this is a good start to this book. And at that point, I didn't know anything about India in terms of the culture, in terms of its spiritual roots. I didn't know anything about gurus. I didn't know anything, okay? And here I am reading this book. And I guess I connected so well with the book that it was almost as if the book was explaining to me some of the things or the experiences that I have had, and how that was just kind of like, woo, just kind of slowly going into what yoga is. And I didn't know what yoga was at that point. If you just said the word yoga, I would always think of just, you know, white women in tights, stretching and things like this. I never really cared, nor just, I mean, just remember the lifestyle, okay? 200 pounds, beer belly, bar Tuesday, Wednesday. You know, yoga is the last thing you'll probably hear of. And the end of the book had, I mean, it was very interesting, everything, although I didn't understand much, you know, and it talks about many different things. And at the end of the book, there is something called Recipe for Well-Being, I believe, if I remember correctly. And it had 10 asanas. And I started practicing those. For those of you listening and doing any Isha practices, please do not do this. Book yoga is the worst thing you could ever do. It's, you know, you can harm yourself actually, but I am quite grateful that I found that, because I started practicing these asanas, and it was only 10 of them, and I would do them in the morning, no empty stomach, no nothing. I would just do it whenever I felt like it, and I started feeling something, you know, every time I stretched in one particular asana. And for those of you that practice asanas or Isha Yogasanas, that was Paschimottanasana. I could very significantly feel something within me. I just didn't know what it was. And I'm like, what the hell is this? You know, there's something here. I just don't know what it is. And I just became so thirsty to know, what the hell is this? This is not just a stretch. And although the book was there, I have to admit, I stopped reading at that point, because I got so caught up with the asanas that I didn't care about the rest of the book until I understood what was happening. And I started doing these things twice a day. So by this time is now January, and in February or so, on YouTube, again, looking yoga, asanas, like all of these things, suddenly chakras and all this nonsense that you can find on YouTube just started, coming onto me. And I remember I clicked on to watch a video about something, how to balance your chakras or something, I don't know. And Sadhguru came in a commercial.
Okay.
And and I said, who's this man? And those 5 seconds that you have to click next on that video to skip your commercial, that's all it took. I didn't know what exactly was said. I don't know what he was talking about, maybe inner engineering, I don't know. And then I just clicked, and it led me to another video, and then another video, and then another video, and another one, and another one, and another one. And I'm just here spending the entire day and night, because again, remember, I'm depressed, I have no job, I have no girlfriend, I have no life. So all I'm doing is just watching Sadhguru's videos and just trying to get answers. And what I found very particular, and I've heard a lot of people resonate with this, is that I felt like he was talking to me. Like he was directly talking about what was happening in my current life, and the current situations that were existing. And in another aspect, I felt like he was intellectually feeding me, making me understand the experiences that I was having. Because that's one of the particular things about my journey, I guess, is that I had to kind of look for yoga, although it landed on my lap. But a lot of people first go into it or read about it, and then they have an experience. To me, it was the opposite. I had a blown out experience, didn't know what the hell it was, and then had to find out why. So here he was, Sadhguru, explaining everything that was happening to me. And the more I heard him talk, the more I felt this was so unreal. Like I don't think this is true. I don't think this is real. This cannot be. And then the more he would just say, the more I would connect. I remember in one, okay, maybe this is just going too much.
No, go on now.
But I guess this is what you want to hear.
Yes.
I remember this was, I think, February or maybe early March, because I applied for Hatha Yoga School in March. So maybe in late February, I remember I'm in my room. And at that point, I didn't know what meditation was. And my way of meditating back then was lying down on my bed, palms open, and just stay there until I fell asleep. That was the way I used to meditate. And I remember I would listen to a lot of his videos and also some meditations just like that until I found out about Ishakriya. But I remember for this one particular meditation, I'm lying down on the bed and I close my eyes and I let the meditation go. And 10 minutes into it, I feel a presence in my room. It just, I mean, I didn't know if I was scared. I didn't know if I was happy. I didn't know what I was at that point, but I just could not wrap around my head what was happening, because I felt someone in my room. I could even smell things. I got so scared, I immediately stopped the meditation.
Okay.
And again, more questions and more questions. And again, every time I watch the videos, Sadhguru here is answering these questions and almost telling me like, don't worry, like just keep doing what you're doing. Don't ask questions, just do it. But, again, I've never been the intellectual type up until maybe not too long ago, but never really cared for the explanation of things, just knowing that it's happening. But some of these things were so outlandish, so outside of whatever you would consider normal, that I just was like, can you just please tell me what this is? Like, you know, at that point I was very depressed because a lot of these experiences I would talk to other people about and they would think I'm crazy, and not finding anyone I can relate to. My brother-in-law, thankfully, he had read some books about Osho, and he even lent me one. So I was reading Zen by Osho. I was reading, and those things were kind of there, but still not somebody that I can look at and talk to that had already had these experiences. You know, they were just kind of here, like, I think this will help you, but I was like, but you don't understand the things that are happening. You know, I these things are not normal. I remember even telling my dad one particular experience that I was having at that time, and still today. But you know, as you open up yourself to these things, your perception enhances, right? And some of the things that come with that, if you're not well rooted in your sadhana, you know, they can be very new, and if you are not, you know, you're not having somebody to guide you as to what you're experiencing, it could be detrimental. And some of the experiences that I was having, I was telling my dad, I was like, Dad, this right now, is this true? And he says, yeah. And I was like, how can you not believe that these things are happening to me? And he's like, yeah, you know, I was also like that, you know, I was very intuitive and things like that. I was like, no, you don't get it. And I guess that's where my relationship with my dad kind of just, you know, it wasn't the best. I mean, this is not to say that other things had not happened before, but in terms of my journey, this is where he kind of started questioning, you know, like, is he on drugs or something, you know? And I started to have these experiences even more often than not, and some of them just never went away. And it's almost like, you know, here you are, experiences life one way. Just put it like this for the people that are listening. Let's say that you know, you have never worn glasses, but you need them, right? Let's say your eyesight is not the best, and suddenly you are given a pair of glasses at age 29, and suddenly you put them on and you see the world and you're like, oh my goodness. You know, you see
Right.
everything so clear, you see everything so there, and you can even see more than other people, right? Because you have your glasses, and that's what I was experiencing. I could not really wrap my head around everything that was happening. So that time, I must say that it wasn't a fun time, you know, although I'm very thankful for the experiences that I had, but it was the worst time for me, because now that I look back, you know, it's so nice to remember, but at that point, I didn't want to be in my shoes, you know. So many different things, and you always hear about spirituality being this beautiful unicorn, rainbows, you know, heaven, la la land, and it wasn't like this from what I was experiencing. I was like, this is, I don't want to say it's awful, but since it was so new, I was just completely baffled by it. I didn't know, you know, how to deal with the situations that were happening. And again, slowly Sadhguru would kind of like reel me back in,
Okay.
you know, and say, it's, you know, do this, that. So at that point, I didn't know anything about the Hatha Yoga school.
Oh.
And I was just listening to Sadhguru, and I remember one day he started talking about yoga.
Oh.
And I'm like, wait, yoga? I have a book about that. And he started, you know, just sharing and I guess transmitting so much that I was like, oh my goodness, this is something else. You know, this yoga is not, it's not the stretch part that I saw. And he started talking about the Hatha Yoga school and classical Hatha Yoga. And because of all these things that were happening to me, I remember my sister had told me, you know what, why don't you try to do a yoga training, you know, become a certification or something. You know how over here you can get the like 200 certification, 200-hour thing like that. And I said, you know what, it's not a bad idea. So I started looking at schools, and when Sadhguru mentioned that he has a Hatha Yoga school, I said, what? And this man has an ashram? This man has a whole place for himself? I want to go. So immediately after, I applied for Hatha Yoga school. So mind you, I saw Sadhguru for the first time on YouTube in February.
Okay.
In March, I applied for the school.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So the school got back to me. I remember I had multiple interviews actually, because I was very honest, telling them everything about my life. And I remember Ma Jayatri, who is now Ma Jayatri, had an interview with me, and you know, she was very helpful. She was telling me so many different things, and just, I remember it was almost as if they're asking me, are you sure you want to come? Like, you know, this is going to be hell. I was like, are you sure you want to? It's almost as if they were trying to convince me not to go.
Okay.
But I was so, I guess, I was so determined to do this because of the experiences that I was having, that I said, I don't care if I die in that training. I want to understand what the hell is happening to me. You know, and at that point I got, for the first time, it's almost like I put my foot down and I said, what is this? You know, what's happening to me? I want to understand. You know, I lost my friends. I lost some of my family members. I lost everything that I knew because of all this. This is my world now. Like just a couple of months ago, I was, you know, worried about so many different things that now make no sense. What is happening to me? And I knew I was onto something, but you know, sometimes you get frustrated in this path, I guess, especially when you're just starting. So I guess I told them, you know, that the longing that I had was beyond anything, and I would do anything that they asked me. And I told them this, and I said, I will do anything that you tell me to do, I will do. And she says, are you sure about that? And I said, yes. And then they started telling me the routine. They started telling me a lot of what the schedule would be like. And I said, I don't care. This is how determined I am. You know, I don't care if I have to go to boot camp, you know. In fact, when I was younger, again, another insight here, I was one day away from going to sign to go to boot camp for the U.S. Marines.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, and I was 18 years old. And I'm glad I never did that, because as soon as that happened, the next year, the United States went to war with Afghanistan.
Oh.
So I'm glad I never did that. But you know, I said, look, if I was ready to go to boot camp, I think I'm ready to go to this yoga boot camp. So finally, they got back to me and they said, congratulations, you've been accepted. I could not even believe it. But on that last interview, before they gave me the okay, I said, look, I know I haven't been accepted yet, but I already have my flight ticket. And then they said, oh, do you? I said, yeah, I want to be there. Whatever it is that Sadhguru is, whatever he is, or whoever he is, I think I have to be there. And they said, you know, actually, we wanted to let you know that you have been accepted, so congratulations. And I was like, oh my God. So I remember crying. I was so happy and excited. And then preparations for training became the thing. And suddenly, you know, it was so beautiful, because it was right after I got that acceptance that it was almost like, you know, it was like a big relief, because I was finally going to get on the path of understanding all of these things that were happening to me. Because to that point, I still didn't know what the hell is happening. And I remember when I was packing, when I was, giving away things, because I said, I mapped out a journey, and I said, because I wanted to go to India anyway, every time that I looked in maybe YouTube or Google or any books or anything, including that first book that was given to me, always led back to India for whatever reason. And so I was planning to go to India, but I was not planning to go there until 2017. And here I am, March 2016, getting ready. And I remember they contacted me from school and said, have you done the inner engineering program? I said, no. I said, okay. So Sadhguru is going to be in Atlanta.
Oh.
And we'd love for you to go and complete your inner engineering with Sadhguru. And I said, oh my God, I get to see him live, of course. And then they said, yeah. And I said, where, so when is it? Next week. And I was like, oh my God, next week. So where is it? Atlanta. I was like, oh my God. Okay, fine. So they gave me a week, and then they said, but wait, you have to complete the inner engineering online before you go there. I said, inner engineering online, okay, and what is this? He said, well, it's a 7 sessions, blah, blah, they went on through it. So I had 4 days to finish the inner engineering program online, get myself on a plane, fly to Atlanta, and get initiated into Shambhavi. And it went just phenomenal. It was amazing. It was, I guess, that day was probably the first time that I felt some sort of relief in terms of what was happening to me. And this was just 2 weeks before I got accepted to school. So it was just, too much. For those of you that have done inner engineering, you understand, sometimes there's no comment that would do justice to what happens there. Especially for those of you that are open up to receive whatever Sadhguru has to give. So it was just so in my face, and I felt like I just walked out with like grace falling upon me. And I get back to New York City, and I remember Swami Rohil calls me a few days later, and he says, hey, namaskaram. So we wanted to ask you if you're available for a Hatha Yoga class, so that you are a little bit more, I guess, used to what you will be doing here in the ashram. And I said, of course, yeah. Where do I have to go? Tennessee. I was like, Tennessee? Okay, when? Saturday. I was like, wow, like you guys think I'm just here waiting to fly left and right. And I was broke, but I said somehow it just happened, I flew to Tennessee. I remember once, this is just one of those extra details for those people listening. I remember getting to Tennessee, and I had no money to get from the airport to the ashram, because they wanted me to either take a shuttle that I had missed or rent a car. And when I went to use my card, they would not take it. And the next shuttle wouldn't be till the next day. And I'm like, oh my God, the class is the next day. What am I going to do? So I'm here sitting in the airport, Tennessee, crying because I cannot get to ashram, which was like 2 hours from the airport or something like this. And I called the ashram, and they were so nice. I remember Adi, he answered the phone, and I told him my situation. He was like, oh, don't worry. Like, you don't have to get like that. And I was like, but I can't get to the ashram. And he was like, don't worry. Look, why don't you try to see what's the closest town you can get to, and we'll pick you up from there. And I was like, oh my God, wow. So fair enough. They drove me about an hour, and then they picked me up. and he drove me the other hour and a half to the ashram. And I was so thankful. And I was like, my God, this guy stopped everything he was doing to get me. Like, I'm just one more participant. I'm no one special here, you know? And I felt like that was probably one of the first experiences that I had with a volunteer, with an Isha volunteer. And I was just so thankful, you know, and this guy just simply did it out of his heart. And he's like, and I'm over here like, look, I got $20, man. And he's like, don't worry, just save it. You know, this is just, we're just trying to help you. And I was like, wow, thank you so much. And I went through Surya Kriya. So I learned Surya Kriya in Tennessee, who teacher is now a Swami in Ashram and in India Ashram. And he took Brahmacharya, I think, last year. So it was really nice to see him last year. And after I came back to New York, and since I was, you know, an aspiring trainee, they wanted me to talk to Sheila, who's one of the teachers in the Hatha Yoga school. She happened to be in Tennessee that day. She was with her parents, and I'm like, oh my God, this is me. This is the time that I have to like finally talk to somebody. And I was so excited to talk to her, and I couldn't.
Oh.
She was really busy, and the next morning when she was free, I had to leave for the airport. So I couldn't talk to her, and I had to save my questions for another day. And I remember once I came back to New York and I got my acceptance for the school, I was getting ready to leave, and I found an old iPad that I used to work with in the financial industry. And looking at the iPad, I was going to give it to my mother. So I started deleting all the information that was there, like all these notes, and I was like, this is dreadful. And then I started looking at the pictures, and in those pictures, I found a picture of Mount Kailash.
Oh.
And I'm like, oh my God. And I started reading. Well, so I started to remember that when I had the office in the company, I wanted to feng shui the office. You know, get the energies right.
Yeah.
I didn't know anything about that, but I remember my sister telling me, she's like, look, take a look at this book and do what's set there so that you can bring some luck into your office. I said, well, okay, you know, what doesn't hurt anybody. So, you know, it said you should have a bowl, a crystal bowl in the office, and you should have this, and your desk should face this way. And then it said at the very end, with the picture of Mount Kailash, it said, place a picture of Mount Kailash behind your desk. And I was like, what? So I'm reading this, and I just simply started crying, because I felt like this thing had been in my life for so long that I was not paying attention to, you know? Here it is, like all the significance that is behind Mount Kailash, right? For those of you that are listening, Mount Kailash is Shiva's abode, as Sadhguru calls it. And this is where so many yogis and sages have left their entire knowing just in a form of energy in that mountain. And here I am packing, looking at this picture, crying. And I said, you know what, this is no coincidence. I'm so happy that I get to do this. So I decided to go to Kailash. So I added on after training, what am I going to do? Mount Kailash. So I said, Kailash, here I come. So I planned my trip so that I would be in India throughout the training. And then I would also stay traveling in India, go up to Nepal, and then eventually go to Kailash. But as soon as I got to India, I was so discouraged because I didn't have enough money. Everybody kept telling me, no, you should go with Sadhguru. What are you doing?
Oh my
I said,
God.
I don't care. I'll go hitchhike there. I don't care. But I ended up changing plans. I couldn't go there, but it's still on my list. But I decided to have a one-way ticket to go to India. And I packed a bunch of unnecessary things. So for those of you that are maybe have been accepted for training and are listening, trust me, you will not need half of the things you're probably packing. I'd suggest that you only take what's necessary and nothing else, really. The focus of you being there should solely be for the training, and they will provide everything that you need. So just some clothing will be enough. I got to Ashram, and immediately after I finally just settled in, I didn't know what I was feeling, but I loved it, whatever that was. I was just so humbled. I was so happy. I was so, I don't know, I was so nostalgic. So many different things, so many different emotions just simply hit me. And I didn't know anything about Dhyana Linga. I didn't know anything about Linga Bhairavi Devi. I didn't know anything about the Surya Kun. I didn't know anything about the Adiyogi Alayam. I didn't know anything. I didn't know anything. Okay, nothing. And here I am, you know, just 4 or 5 months before this, I had seen Sadhguru for the first time, and here I am, you know, trying to take on this training. So, like I said, the number one focus for me was understanding what was happening to me. And I remember for the first day that everybody is introducing themselves in the training program, everybody's saying, you know, their first name and what they are here for or why. And I remember, you know, I stood up and I said my name, and I said, I'm here because I have no idea what's happening to me, and I want to take charge of this. And that's it. I exactly what I had said. I kept in my mind the entire program. So I have to, you know, be honest and say that when I went in for the training, I had zero intentions of teaching. None. I didn't really think that I was going to teach after this. I just wanted to really see what's happening within me and understanding everything that Sadhguru was talking about. So that was kind of like the whole point of me being there. And of course, the training is it's so amazing. Yeah, I mean, you know, forget about that the boot camp aspect and, you know, the physical aspect of it. You know, yeah, it's something else. We can go into details. Not many though, but I can't. But I'm sure you've talked to enough teachers to know that this, you know, it's not a breeze, at least. But not even about that aspect, you know. Like I said, I was willing to go through it. I didn't care what it took. But you know, just the fact that you're in a consecrated space has the impact of just, if you just sit there, you know, you don't have to do any intense sadhana, nothing. If you just simply sit in this space, something will start to kick within you. And it started really becoming a bigger and a bigger experience within me, being in the Adiyogi Alayam, because at some point we were also sleeping there. So, you know, we're spending almost the entire day in a consecrated space and going through such intense sadhana, doing so many different things. And I felt like slowly this person that I had thought to be slowly started to like crumble apart. And I didn't know how to take it, but I was very open to it, you know, to receiving whatever it is that I was giving, or I guess I was very open to that change that was coming within me. And I remember at some point, you know, like it was almost from like one day to the next, I realized, I looked at myself, I was like, wow, I'm even walking differently. The way that I walk started to change. the way that I speak, the way that I look physically. I did change a little bit too, and all of these things started to happen. But yet again, I guess that longing was still there, and I didn't know why. And I'm like, but what is it then? I'm already here. What is it? Still so many different questions out in my mind. And being in Sadhguru's presence for darshan, the ashram was just, mind blowing. Meeting all the teachers, these are people that I look up to still today. They have in so many ways shaped me into who I am today. And so I look up to all of them. I'm extremely grateful because you start to see the culture, and again, I want everyone to understand this this difference between the culture of the financial industry that I was coming from to the culture in the ashram. And it was so tangible. You see these volunteers just doing everything that they can to make this class happen for you. Everything is pristine, perfect, aligned. Everything's on time. Like everything, food, class, whatever it is that you're doing will be on time. Even trips, and all these things, start to change you in so many different ways. And I guess that was the beginning of this big ride that I'm going through right now. So that's kind of where up to training. Should I give you more details about training? I don't know.
It's up to you. Like if you have something, like you talk about trips and all.
Well, okay, so trips. Let's talk about the most significant trip I had. I think I want to say was going to Trichy. So the school takes you to, I forget the name of the temple, but it's the water temple in Trichy. So it's very very famous temple. For those of you that don't know, there are temples in South India that are specifically consecrated for each one of the elements in creation. So earth, water, wind, fire, and ether, or akash. And we visited the one for water. And that was not just the fact that we were outside, and we were able to be in India, because, when you're in the ashram, it's very different from when you're actually traveling outside. But I was so lucky and happy that I was able to be a part of the culture in the ashram before I started traveling. And when we went to Trichy, we also sat in a place where Sadhguru Sri Brahma meditated. So it was very, very significant for me because we were exposed to so many different places and energies. And I cannot tell you exactly what was it that just marked the difference for me. But I can say that when we were in the water temple, after we come out of the main temple, everyone was just simply sitting in the mandapa meditating. And it was for the first time that I saw all of the other trainees simply sitting with eyes closed. In the training, we were kind of doing it because we kind of had to, not because we enjoyed it, but here it is for the first time, all these yogis to be with eyes closed, simply just absorbed in meditation. And I'm like, wow. Now, let me justify that I was not one of them. Why? Because since I mentioned that I am also a photographer, I was one of the photographers for the 2016 batch. So if you see any pictures of the 2016 batch, that was either myself or Abaya. And so, I was just clicking away, but it was so beautiful to see all these different people finally sitting there and just imbibing what this place had to give. And that was kind of the trip that made a difference for me in terms of understanding, I guess, the significance of these places and why they're taking us to these places specifically. And to share about trips also, for those of you that are going to training, don't think that trips will make you skip your sadhana. even if you go to a trip, you will stop for sadhana. Okay, they will make time for your sadhana, and you should only be thankful, because when you do your sadhana, it's almost like you're preparing yourself to go into these places. So I did not understand that then, but now I do fully, and so I'm really grateful for the training. It's almost like and I don't have enough words to say what this training has done for me and what it gives you. So I can only bow down to everyone that made it possible for me, and all meditators, all teachers, Sadhguru, my family, everyone who had in some way or another contributed to this. I can never thank them enough. I think the only way of me thanking them is to simply working upon myself to not disappoint them. But it's too much. I mean, what you go through in that training is so much. It's not even about, a lot of people think that you go into training and you're going to learn this asana and that practice and this practice and that practice, but you start to notice and understand that yoga is not just so about the physical practices that you do, but even just the way that you leave your chapels before you go into any room or anything. That's yoga. And that's what started to slap me in my face, that yoga is so much more than whatever it is that we're doing here. And that's when I started to just get so excited about spending time in the ashram, because yoga is happening everywhere in the ashram. Just when you do practice, it's not just happening in a temple. Yoga is happening everywhere in the ashram, and people sometimes just simply walk past it and they don't notice, And so it just started to open me up in a way that I never thought it would. And I have to say that I during the training, I did go very intense. I want to say I was very intense in terms of sadhana. I was injured. I didn't even know. Once I started the training and started all these practices, I started to notice that I had so many things wrong with my body. I noticed I had a partially dislocated right shoulder. Okay, I had no idea about it. And I also had, which is still healing, I have a restricted movement, a movement restriction on my left hip. And I didn't know any of these things, and they started showing up, I guess, on month number 3, maybe, something like this. And I was in so much pain. Sometimes I wouldn't be able to get up from one asana to the next. And some of the teachers started to notice this. And I remember Catherine, one of the teachers, comes up to me and she's like, you have to go to the doctor. Okay. And I said, no, I can't. I can do this. I don't have to see anybody. And I can work through this. This is all karma. Let me burn it. And they're like, all right, you're just talking too much. You got to go. And and so I went to see Dr. Niti Rajan in Coimbatore city. And this is a very interesting story and special story, actually, because that was the first time that I left the ashram on my own. Ooh, as a trainee, right?
Yeah.
And so I was so excited because finally they forced me to go. And so it was myself and I think other 4 people, maybe. maybe 5. And so we all rented a little van, and we took the van to the city. So we're in Coimbatore city. We go to the doctor, and then we're doing different things. And finally, we spent the entire day there. So, he had to see all these people, plus there's an hour and a half ride and an hour and a half ride back and all these things. And plus we were in the city. Some people were getting some things that they needed. And I started to notice that the more time I spent outside the ashram, I became quieter and more quiet and more quiet and more quiet. And like almost by the end of the ride, I didn't want to speak. And I found it just odd, it's almost like, I don't know what, it's not like I was homesick, but I felt just, meh. I didn't feel okay. And I remember we got back to ashram just before they finished, the rest of the trainees finished their evening sadhana. So it was maybe 5:30 or so, or almost 6 o'clock, I want to say. And I remember I walked into the Adiyogi Alayam, everyone's doing their sadhana. And before I even just stepped in, something hit me. And I just simply got on my knees, and it's almost as if I had understood experientially what it is, the Adiyogi Alayam, and what it is to be in the Adiyogi Alayam. And it was just so emotional for me. I'm a very emotional person. If you've noticed, I said I cried here and I cried there. I'm very emotional, man. I have to say that I don't hold back when I have to cry. It's helped me so much. And for those of you that are the same, don't ever hold back on your tears. It's something that has helped me release so much tension and emotion. So I remember there just on my knees crying because I was away from the Alayam for just a few hours. And I said, I don't ever want to leave this place again. And I remember for one of the trips, I almost didn't go because I said, I don't want to. I mean, I didn't tell anyone this, but towards the end, they had given us the option, for some of us, that trip was not mandatory. So I thought about not going. I said, let me just stay here, I'm the ashram. I don't need to go anywhere else. But I also said, you know what? This is a once in a lifetime. I don't know when I'll be able to do this again with my trainee mates and my batch mates. And I said, let me just go. So I did. And I did not regret it. It was amazing. But that was a day that I could honestly see the big difference in what it is to be outside the ashram when you've spent enough time there. And thankfully I graduated and got my certification with everything I could teach. So I did everything successfully. And I remember I was just so focused on trying to get this done, and I didn't want any distractions. I remember, because the ashram has the small convenience store, they sell chocolate, and I'm like, oh my God, chocolate. But I remember I was so strict. I did not eat chocolate until the 3rd month being there, because I said, you know what, I didn't come here for none of this, all the nonsense. I'm here for doing whatever they told me to do. But I gave in after the 3rd month, and I've kept that aspect, so strict with my eating habits even after training. But I'm so thankful, honestly. And I mean, what else can I tell you? It's just so much to summarize. We can spend hours talking about this training, but thankfully, once I graduated in 2016, I stayed in India traveling. I stayed with some friends. I went everywhere. I went to the first trip I went to immediately after ashram. I left to Madurai, and then from Madurai I went to Sri Lanka for my visa. So I stayed in Sri Lanka for maybe 2 weeks. I spent Christmas and New Year's there with another teacher friend. And that was the first class that we taught, actually first started training. And that was very exciting in Sri Lanka. And we came back to Madurai. And then from there, I was traveling with a friend, another batchmate, Millie. And Millie, who also happens to be from Colombia, by the way, she's there right now. At that point, we decided to split. You know, she was going to go her own way and I was going to go my way. And for the first time, this was very significant because everybody's always longing for freedom, right? Everybody wants to be free and do whatever they want to do. But a lot of people don't realize how scary that can be. Because here I am in the middle of Madurai's bus station, not knowing where to go. I'm completely free to do whatever I want. I could have picked any place, anywhere. But here I am sitting, not knowing what the hell to do. You know, I was like, I finally got all the freedom in the world. You know, I don't have any responsibilities right this second. I don't have anything to do or to attend to. And I felt, it wasn't scary, but it was, I guess it just opened me up to a whole level of understanding what it is to have that freedom, right? Because, you know, a lot of people don't experience that often. And here I am, not knowing where to go. So I decided to go to God's own land. So I took a bus to Alipi in Kerala. And I visited the backwaters. I spent some time there. From there, I went to visit a friend in Nagpur. And we went to, I was lucky enough though, Abhaya's friend, that's the friend I stayed with, Abhaya's sister was getting married. So they had
Indian wedding.
Yeah, well, I didn't get to be at the Indian wedding, but I know, but I was able to attend the pre-engagement party.
That is a wedding only.
Yeah, wedding exactly. I mean, I didn't know what the difference was, but I was like, okay. And I remember we went to a state park to see tigers. So we went for a tiger safari and they told me, oh no, you will not be able to see one. You need at least 4 days in the jungle. Here I am 2 hours later, tiger in front of me. And I'm like, yeah. So it was so good to experience that. It was amazing. And from Nagpur, I went to Varanasi. Varanasi was just too much. No words for Varanasi. For those of you that have the opportunity, just go. Varanasi is anything I say will fall short. I spent I think 4 days in Varanasi, and then from Varanasi I went up to Nepal. So I took a train to Gorakhpur, and then Gorakhpur I took a bus to Kathmandu. Actually, no, to the border. And then from the border of Nepal, I went to Kathmandu. I spent some time there. I was extremely sad that I was not able to go into the Pashupati temple because I was not Hindu. If I had a Hindu name then, I could have probably gone.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, they didn't let me in because I wasn't Hindu, and I was like, okay, fine. And I tried to sneak in, and one of the guards ended up pushing me away. No, he got mad and he pushed me. Yeah. He, I mean, he was aggressive. Yeah, and I was too because I was trying to get in.
Yeah.
But I was so sad. And for the first time, I was like, my God, I'm sad about going into a temple. That has never happened, you know, never. And that was very beautiful. Then from there, I went to Pokhara. In Pokhara, I spent some time there, and I guess I was not able to go to Kailash, but I was able to see the Annapurna range from there, and that was pretty satisfying. Seeing the Himalayas there was very touching, very profound, and I felt like, you know, okay, I can check something off the list. I saw the Himalayas. Then I came back. I remember coming back from Nepal to India. I got lost in the train, and I ended up in Bihar.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I didn't know this was, you know, supposed to be a not so safe place. And
Okay.
somebody misguided me. So I ended up riding the train 8 hours in the wrong direction.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So somehow I ended up getting back in the train, and I had to ride in the economy. What is it? What's it called? Economy
General,
class?
general.
Yeah, general, right?
Yeah.
In the general,
Oh my God.
in the general wagon, and that was something else. That was something else. That was something else. I had never done it before, and you know, here I am with my backpacks, and I had to sleep in the train. So maybe 30 some hours later, I ended up in Jaipur, and so I stayed with another friend there. I also taught classes there. In Nagpur, I also taught Surya Kriya with Abhaya. So I was teaching a little bit here and there, and then from there, I came back to Ashram because there was the consecration of the Adi Yogi statue.
Okay.
Yeah, so I came back for Ashram for consecration, and it was just intense. And then from there, I left again. I went to also spend some time in Bangalore. Then I went to also Goa, and then from Goa I went to Mumbai, and then from Mumbai I decided to come back to US.
You're so full India.
Yeah, I've actually done more traveling. Last year I spent time in Uti.
Oh.
I also went to Kolkata.
No.
I went to Pondicherry. And even before that, the year before, I went to Rishikesh.
No.
Yeah, Delhi, I've been a couple times, but I don't like Delhi, to be honest. But yeah, I have to say that I know India better than I know any other country, actually. And I love it. I love India. Everything about it, the people, the culture, the food, the everything. I love it. And so I guess it's also made my decision to move full time into the ashram much easier. So I think that has helped a lot, definitely. And anyway, just fast forward because I've only been just like rambling on for too long.
No,
but
this is very good.
How much time do we have on now?
We have
continue.
Half an hour.
Okay.
You had spent 2 hours. No, we have still half an hour.
Okay, good. So you know, you edit this however you have to.
No editing. This goes as it is.
Okay. Do you have any questions, by the way?
No, this itself is like you are proper. I don't have any questions. Like, I would like to know, like, you came back to US and like.
Yeah, well, so let's continue. I came back to US 2017, and immediately after I came back, I decided to go to Colombia. And something was calling me back in Colombia, you know? So I went to Colombia, and I traveled there too. I spent maybe 3 months traveling, and not all the 3 months were traveling, you know, but I was with my family and did travel to other places I had not visited before. And spending time there definitely allowed me to see that yoga is so much needed in Colombia and entire South America, and no one knows what it is. So when I came back finally, like for good. All my travels were done. I came back in July of 2017. So I spent an entire year outside of just traveling and including the training. So when I came back to New York, I started teaching here. I started teaching with foundation. I got to be with my other batchmates, and life just started in terms of teaching. And good thing as I had some experience teaching. It wasn't like the first time I sat in the dais, so I was very comfortable with that. And when I first got here, they were announcing a studio that was going to be called For Yogis, that it was going to be run by volunteers, by Isha volunteers. And they wanted me and the other two teachers to be part of this studio. And I said, of course, this is like perfect. And that happened only maybe 6 months later. And then it just, unfortunately, it failed because people, unfortunately, a lot of people don't understand that, or Isha meditators don't know that there is no difference between what you would learn from, let's say, an independent Hatha Yoga teacher, as opposed to, let's say, foundation class. People think there is a difference. There is really no difference, because we've been trained to teach exactly the same way. Only difference will be that the foundation has a very specific setup and very specific way of how the classes, I guess, not conducted, because it's conducted the same way, but very small, minute details that you will notice with the foundation. There's Isha volunteers greeting you and things like this. Yeah. If you're an independent teacher, you don't have that luxury. Yeah. So some of those things, but that's it. But because they didn't understand that difference, a lot of people weren't showing up. So what they ended up doing is that they said that Sadhguru had advised to turn it into a Isha center. So that was like a win-win for everybody. And it became the New York Isha Center. And I was one of the teachers there, along with Alex and Arti and Elisa and other teachers in the area. And just was very excited to be able to teach with the foundation. And it was happening quite often. Almost every weekend I was teaching with them. And so when I went into the training, I told you that I did not want to teach, right?
Yeah.
But that was not my intention.
I was about to ask.
Yeah, that was not my intention at all. But towards the end of the training, because of everything that I had explained, all these experiences and how yoga is everywhere in the ashram, and the transformation that I was going through, even just the way that I speak or walk or just how I'm experiencing life, it touched me so deeply that I said, there's no way that I will not teach. Yeah. Like that's how it is. Like nothing else makes more sense. And it was more as a responsibility that I had to share this with the world. Whatever had Sadhguru had given us in that training, it was my responsibility to carry it out. And that's when I decided that I will move to Colombia and teach in South America.
Oh, okay.
So in 2018, I decided to move, and I moved to Cali. That's where I was born. And by the way, just a quick parenthesis here, the name Cali is actually they have said that it has also derived from Kali Ma, which is the goddess in India. And I had no idea about this. And I thought it was very special because I'm a big devotee of Kali Ma, and living in a city that it was basically named after her. And the other part of the world was very significant. It was exciting. And I started teaching there. I was teaching in Cali, Medellin, Bogota. We had different workshops there, and it was amazing. But only thing was, nobody knew Sadhguru.
Oh.
So it was a little hard. I don't want to say hard. I want to say challenging. I brought a lot of challenges because we had to first, it's almost like introducing Isha Hatha Yoga to the world in that country. And and then not only that, but Colombia is a very happy country. If you look, some of the studies that say, oh, the world's happiest country, Colombia has been number one for many years in a row. I don't know about the current one, but Colombia, the people there are very happy, and 90% of them, I want to say, are struggling. It's almost like India, everybody's struggling in India, but everybody's so nice within them. It's almost like they want to celebrate everything. So it's the same thing in Colombia. Only difference is Colombians like to party.
Oh. Okay.
So I'm pretty sure, the salsa dancing and all these things.
Oh.
Cali, where I was born, it's also known as the salsa capital of the world.
Okay.
So I do dance salsa. I grew up dancing this, and that's what I used to do when I used to go to these bars. That's what I would dance. That's everything I would do. And it was almost, I found myself trying to get everybody out of that world and turn inward, and that was not happening. So I did try there, and I moved in September of 2018, and then in February of 2019, I was told about Samyama.
Okay.
And I said, you know what? I should go, but I'm so far. I'm in Colombia, man, and where am I going to have my interview for my Samyama preparation? None of this. And I applied. They never got back to me. And I applied a second time. They never got back to me.
Oh.
And I'm like, you know what? The hell with this, man. Samyama is not for me. It's just not happening. And the year before that, 2018, I had the same thing.
Oh. Okay.
I guess I was too much of a rebel. Because a lot of people were saying, oh my God, are you doing Samyama? You're doing Samyama. And there's this whole hype about Samyama. And I felt like it was almost like a lot of people just wanted to check one more program off their list. And for me, it wasn't like this. For me, Samyama is about spending 7 days in silence with Sadhguru and the possibilities that it could have, not just about me checking something off my list. So I didn't like the approach that a lot of people were having towards this. So I got very discouraged. And me, as the rebel in me, said, you know what, I'm not doing it, whatever.
Okay.
And then 2 weeks before that, I remember sitting with another Hatha Yoga teacher. His name is Samir. He teaches in New Jersey, and he says, well, why don't you volunteer? I said, volunteer? But I have not done it. How can I volunteer? He says, just don't worry, apply. And I got accepted to volunteer. So I volunteered for the 2018 in Tennessee. And I had, I guess, my own Samyama experience. So for 2019, I said, I have to do it. But then again, when the people weren't getting back to me, I said, maybe this is just not for me. So I'm gonna skip it. So I speak to another friend of mine who was in the ashram at the time, Victor. He's my best friend, man. He's my buddy. He's also from 2016 batch. So Victor Anna tells me, oh man, you have to come. Like, you cannot miss it. And I said, no, it's fine. Let's just not sweat it. If it's not happening smooth, maybe it's just not meant to be just yet. And then 2 days later, he contacts me and he says, I spoke to Swami Rohil, and he says to contact him. And I was like, wow, okay. So I contacted him, and then through the school, I was able to get registered. And so I found myself a week before Samyama, still not registered fully. I didn't have a tag number, none of that. Everybody gets their number, none of that. And I received it 2 days before going to Samyama. And so I said, okay, I guess this is meant to be. So I went from Colombia to New York. In New York, I gave some classes, then traveled to India, did Samyama, came back to New York, and then came back to Colombia.
That's a big ride.
Yeah, that was, but it was so worth it, man. It was amazing. I think there was Gangesh before Samyama and after Samyama. I cannot say the same about the training, although it was almost like it was putting everything in place for that transformation to happen. But immediately after Samyama, that's when I applied for a name change. And I just recently received it in October. by Sadhguru, and so the name Gangesh means Lord of Ganga. So Mother Ganga, the holy river, as many of you know, the Ganges River, as it is called here. It is another name of Shiva. And when I received this name, I remember I was volunteering because Sadhguru was coming to New York in November. And I'm in the middle of this booth. I'm one of the volunteers in the booth, you know, talking about inner engineering and the Mystic Eye program. And I get an email, and I'm like, oh my God. So I left. I went in the bathroom and I checked. And funny story about this, because when I read it, I read Ganesh.
Oh.
And I'm just looking at it like, Ganesh? I'm like, man, I've been waiting for so long. Ganesh is like the most common name in India. It just didn't resonate, you know? I mean, nothing against Lord Ganesh, right? I mean, very devoted, but it just didn't make anything happen within me. And I have heard that, you know, when you get a name from Sadhguru, it's like so many things just tremble within you. And I'm like, no, I cannot. And I was so excited. I read this thing maybe 10 times, Vaisakh.
Okay.
And I was so excited that I had not read it properly.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And so again, I'm sitting at the booth, just kind of like, you know, bummed out. And I'm laughing because, you know, I have so many expectations about the name, yet I get it and I'm not excited. So I'm laughing about that. And then I'm looking at it and I just slowly read it now, calm, finally, maybe an hour later. And I read Gangesh. And I'm like, oh my God. Definitely different. And when I said it out loud, something within me just sparked. I don't know what to say. It is, I don't know what, but, you know, it every time, for the first couple of months, when somebody would just say that name out loud, call me, something within me would just get ignited. Something completely different. I don't know what. I cannot pinpoint it. but it was finally that transition from, you know, you being identified with somebody that you're not, or something that you're not. Because my old name, and for those of you that are wondering, you can ask around, I'm not going to give it to you. but when I was called my old name, it almost brought back all of these other compulsions and memories and other things that I was always identified with. And when I heard this new name, it was almost like they were calling me, you know, like whatever it is that you call me, it's almost like that was finally, in many ways, was addressed, you know, like, so when I say Vaisakh, or Vaisakh is their actual name, right? So when I say that, you know, yeah, that's your name. That's the name that you've always known, if you've always had. And that was my experience with my old name. But suddenly when I heard this new name, something else just completely shattered within me. And it was almost like every time I hear that name, I have to bow down to my guru. And not just that, but everything that I have been through, and just so grateful that I have been given this possibility, you know. And I'm not one, if, you know, for those of you that have class with me, I'm not one to go into like these deeper dimensions and the experiences and all this nonsense. I tend, and if you notice, I have very kept it, you know, I've kept it to the minimal, but I guess, you know, it's such a humbling experience to be able to receive a name from Sadhguru, and whatever it is that this name is meant to do for me, I think it's doing. Because so many things have actually shifted since I received the name. So it's almost like you think that this process or this path that we're walking, it's almost like, okay, here's one step. Oh my God, yeah, okay, now I get it. And then you get smacked in the face and says, here's something else.
Yeah.
And then here's something else. And you're constantly growing. And for me, that was, that whole process, that everything that I've talked about. So from before I even heard of Sadhguru to after meeting Sadhguru in inner engineering, it's like, oh my God, things make sense now. And then later, going through the training, it's like, oh, okay, I get it now. And then again, after Samyama, it's like, oh no, this time I got it.
Yeah.
And then finally, I get my name and it's like, oh my God, I never got it actually, never. And I still don't to this day, because like Sadhguru says, you don't know anything. And the more you know, the more you learn, the more you understand that you really don't know. So if you keep learning every day, then how much do you actually know? I love reggae music, and there's this one song by Prodigy. For those of you that want to Google it.
Yes, I'll also Google it.
The song is called Who Knows?
Who knows?
And he says, what do you know if you learn every day? So be careful the things that you say. And I thought that's a very powerful line, because, what do you really know? If you're learning every day, what do you really know, right? And so always be careful the things that you say. So I think, for me, it's been a phenomenal experience with Isha, being a teacher, and in many times it's been almost like I don't want to say a challenge, but it's almost a responsibility that you have to live up to, in many ways. And I mean, no pressure for any teacher and anybody, but that's kind of how I felt to a certain extent, that the more you teach and the more you are in touch with different participants and people, they in some way they look up to you. And you know what? I'm not perfect. I still struggle with so many different things, but having those people rely on you make it so much more important for you to get up and do what you have to do. So I guess that brings, for me, in my experiences, brought the level of growth like on fast forward almost. And I just keep working on myself, because it never ends. So last year, when I came back from Samyama, like I said, so many different things changed, but I had so many plans just up until end of last year. I had plans of moving to Bali and doing so many different things and teaching there, and I didn't know, should I go back to South America? Because I actually came back to New York because it started getting quite a struggle for me there financially. So I started thinking, and I didn't know what to do, and I needed some clarity in my life. And Swami Canada, he's somebody that's always been there for me since training, because in fact, I used to work with him doing the photography for the batch. So I worked with him closely, and he's been kind of like that voice of guidance for me in so many different ways. And he's always helped me bring clarity into my life. And in I think January this year, the foundation flew me to Orlando to teach Surya Kriya, and there was a participant who wanted me to spend some time with him, and so I went to see him in Miami. And when I was there in Florida, I remember calling. Well, he actually texted me, and I said, "Whoa, you just texted me in that right time. I need to talk to you." And I just told him, about so many things that were going on in my life, and I didn't know what to do. And then we started talking about inner engineering, and he says, you know that you want to go back to Colombia and teach in Spanish, but Sadhguru is not there in Spanish. You know, the amount of content that's given to Sadhguru, to the people in Latin America is not enough. Like I mentioned to you, not everybody knows Sadhguru there. So the opportunity was offered for me to be an engineering teacher and teach in Spanish. And I'm like, wow. And so I thought about it. And the more I thought, the more it made sense, you know, and the more I thought about my life outside the ashram, you know, it just doesn't make any more sense. Nothing makes any more sense. And I don't know how many of you can relate to this, and I don't know if you can, Vaisakh, but in my life, nothing else makes any more sense, honestly. Nothing else does. And so I decided, I even took a day, I went to silence trying to figure this out. And to be honest with you, it was almost like the decision had already been made for me.
Okay.
I just had to come to terms with that decision. That, Gangesh, you're now going to go through this training. And I'm like, oh God. So, you know, I took some time to reflect on this, and it did not make more sense. And so I accepted it. And I went through the interviews. I got accepted for the inner engineering training program. And I'm very excited about that. So only thing was that as soon as everything was kind of set up, virus came.
Oh, yes.
Because I was supposed to be in India right now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but you know, that happened, and along with that, you know, the decision of becoming full-time volunteer at Ashram and just staying there, which, you know, it's a big transition, but like I said, you know, nothing else makes sense. And I'm just excited to be able to help people and, you know, give back everything that has been given to me, you know, the training, so many different programs, Samyama. Like, I'm so blessed and have so many different things that have impacted my life. I don't live a lavish lifestyle. I tell so many different people, you know, I don't, although I live in New York City, it's an expensive city, but I don't have luxuries, you know. But I don't care about those things anymore. And I decided that the best way that I can contribute back is just going there full time and give myself totally to Isha. And it's exciting. So I'm just waiting for the word to be passed so that I can travel. So virus willing, or let me not say virus willing, let's say lockdown willing. I'll be in India by the end of the month, hopefully. So it'd be great to meet you there, Anna.
Yes, yes, definitely.
Yeah, but you know, I hope that this conversation has been interesting for a lot of people. I did go into a lot of nonsense, maybe that you're not interested in.
No. This is the nonsense we are interested in.
Thank you so much. But I really am having a great time talking to you. Well, doing most of the talking, really, because you're just listening. But I feel very comfortable for some reason. And even not in the lives, I don't even share a lot of the things that I have shared here. I don't even share in the Instagram lives. Many people, in fact, and I should have said this at the beginning, but many people do not know me very well, personally speaking. A lot of people know me, and I guess especially because I'm a teacher. The other day, just, you know, I guess maybe she would listen to this at some point, but I had a meditator reach out to me on Instagram. She's like, "Oh my God, Anna, it's so good to see you on Instagram. I'm so glad I'm following you. I've heard so much about you." And I'm like, what? I said, I hope that's not bad. I don't know what they've heard, but I'm not one to share much of my personal life. So I hope that you know, this has in some way inspired people, because I'm not one to share much about my life. So exclusive for Vaisu, inclusive for Vaisu.
Yeah.
So, I hope that a lot of people who are listening right now, whether you are feeling lost for, not knowing what to do next with your life, or if you're right now going through this path of yoga, but somehow you're struggling, or you being, I guess, having a lot of resistance to whatever is happening in your life, just know that everything will make sense later. I heard something not too long ago that I was talking to my mother about, and I said, well, whatever quote this is from, I don't remember, but let's say the quote, God does not put you in situations that you're not able to come out of, so whatever situation you're out in right now, it's okay. Things will get better, and everything, very cliche, but everything happens for a reason. I think I can concur on that. And I hope that this is, for many of you, maybe just a voice of hope and inspiration, that things do get better, and that there is light at the end of the tunnel, and that although many different things in your life are not happening the way you want them to, or you may seem to, because a lot of people also write to me about how their family or whatever happening to them, people are against of. And I've been there, even I think for some of you that saw the live that I recently had with Arti, I was talking about my family and how my father was never really supportive of me in yoga. Now 4 years later, he finally agreed that I can teach him Surya Namaskar. Yoga Namaskar. And he's practicing Simha Kriya. So the things do change, and what I want to make people understand is that you do not force others into anything. Okay, if you want to share what you've learned with them, what you should do is become that example. Do not try to force people to learn yoga, whether it is Isha Kriya or whatever, or Sadhguru, because a lot of people tell me, oh, well, but people think I'm in a clan. Well, but why? Because you're shoving them down their throat something they don't want to listen to. Instead, what you should realize is that the only way that they will feel inclined and also interested in what you're doing is if they see the change within you. So I had to learn that the hard way, and now, because I live this, this is what I do, this is who I am today. Now people are interesting. So wait, why do you do this, like 5 hours a day of this? Like what are you doing? And then they have questions, or also simply because they see me more calm in a situation where others freak out. Then they come and ask questions. So those of them who are ready will ask. And what you should not forget is that a lot of the times you're wasting all of this magnificent energy that you may have sharing this with the world with the wrong people. Because the wrong people, you may want to share everything you want, but they don't have ears to listen to you. They do not. It's going to go in through here, it's going to come out right here. So try to instead spend that energy, or not even spend, share that energy with people who are actually ready to receive it. See, like me, I had a picture of Mount Kailash in the back of an office, in the back of my chair in an office in 2014 or something, or maybe 13. Somebody had come to me and said, oh, you know what that is? Yoga, blah, blah, blah. I would have just like, all right, thank you. Bye-bye, Frico, I'm being very honest. I would have just pushed them away because I wasn't ready for that conversation. But now, for people who come to you, or you see that they're receptive, that's when you should just pour everything you can into them. But otherwise, don't waste your time, excuse me, trying to force people to learn something that they're just not ready for, and eventually they will be. So I'm an example of that myself personally, and also with my father, and even my mother, my sister. I mean, everyone I can think of right now, and even my friends, even old friends that at some point they stopped talking to me because I became a weirdo for them. Even then, when they came back, they they had these questions, and now makes much more sense to them. So that's just one advice that I want to give everybody. And I like to thank all of you for staying this 2 hours listening to this ramble. So thank you, Vaisakh, so much for inviting me. Thank you so much for what you're doing, this space that you have here for everyone to share and, open up to other meditators, and sharing this with those people that do have those ears to listen to. I'd like to thank you for that. And I want to say, honestly, I want to say this is a very personal thing that I like to share with you.
Oh, yes, please.
Yeah. I do have to say that at some point you inspired me to create a podcast.
Oh, is it? Oh, okay.
Yes. So I want you to continue doing this, because I remember, you interviewing different people before you even came up with the podcast. I was following you in so many different YouTube videos, and I finally found you on Instagram, because I found you on YouTube before I found you on Instagram.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, and I'm like, who's this guy? And I'm like, you know what? This is so amazing. Like, why am I not doing this, right? Or why am I not also sharing? Why am I not helping? Why am I not doing the best I can? So you brought all those questions in, and so I'd like to thank you.
Oh, thank you.
For that. You actually helped some of the teachers and I come with a lot of ideas, and I know that you also work very closely with Sam and Tulsi from Samyama Yoga Life, and yeah, we're always discussing many things of that nature. So I like to personally thank you for that. Thank you for what you're doing.
This has been a whole sadhana for me, talking to you. I'm like, damn, there's so many things I have to explore. I'm even confused what I'll put title of this podcast.
I don't even know I don't know what you're gonna do, but whatever it is, I know it's gonna be the best thing. And also, as I'm finishing here, I'm thinking that maybe people would have liked to listen to other things, again, experiences and all this mysticism and whatnot. But I just wanted to, I guess, take the opportunity to talk to you and let you know that I'm also another human being, going through my own experience of seeking, and that's what led me to where I am today. So yes, this was, I guess, in some way about my life, right? But I didn't want to make it about how, oh my God, my life is so amazing, and my classes and all this. Like, no, no. I want to make sure that people also understand that, I have gone through my own journey to get here. It's not like I've arrived anywhere, but definitely from where I was back in 2015, 200 pounds, depressed and alcoholic, to today, it's all because of that seeking. I'm no different than whoever is listening to this podcast. I'm no different, and just like grace fell upon me because I was receptive to it, same thing can happen to you, so open up. If you've already been initiated into Shambhavi, just open yourself up, because Sadhguru has so much to give every single one of you, I'm telling you.
So on a last, where can people reach out to you, like Instagram or email ID? Which is the best place?
Well, so if they, whoever wants to reach out to me, if you are in the New York area, especially, I will be teaching, starting to teach again, starting next week, corrections, practice corrections, and also any other Hatha Yoga practices. You can reach me on Instagram through Gangesh Yogi. So Gangesh spelled Gangesh, and Yogi, one word. And you can also find me and on on Facebook as Gangesh Pedreros. My last name is Pedreros. That is Pedreros. I don't know if I should give my WhatsApp number.
No. WhatsApp you'll be.
No, but I will say though. I will say, however,
Telegram you give Telegram, Anna.
Yeah, way too many people. But I do. The reason I thought about that is because if you do want to join, there is a sadhana support group that I created here in New York, and now we have people from all over the world. There are people from Africa, South America, India, United States, many different countries that are making part of this sadhana support group that's been right now managed by myself, Arti, who's another Isha Yoga teacher, and Sam and Tulsi. So we have about 90 participants in that group. So if you'd like to be part of it, you can find a link to that group in the link tree that's on my bio in Instagram.
Okay.
Yeah. So
I'll
I don't know
link that also. I'll put it in my description also.
Perfect. So for those of you that, right now struggling, you can definitely join that group. And we're not going to bombard you with a bunch of messages. Please have that in mind, because I'm not a fan of that. But, here and there are little things that will definitely spark that, so that you can get up and do your sadhana in the morning.
Great, Anna. So, thank you so much. I can't wait to upload this.
You're most welcome. Thank you. Thank you very much again, everyone, for listening, staying in tune. Thank you, Vaisakh, for doing this. And I hope to see you soon in India.
Yes, definitely, Anna. Thank you. Namaskaram.
Thank you. Namaskaram, everyone. Bye-bye. Namaskaram.